In the quiet, dusty village of Itoro, where goats wandered freely and mango trees stood like gentle giants, there lived a young girl named Zubaida. She was only 12, with dark glowing eyes and thick braids that danced on her shoulders when she smiled. Zubaida had the kind of laughter that made people forget their worries, and her voice always carried kindness. Before her life turned upside down, Zubaida lived happily with her parents in a small mud brick house at the edge of the village. Her father, Olamide, was a fisherman. Every morning he walked to the river with a wooden boat he built himself, casting his net into the calm waters and returning before sunset with fish he sold in the market. He was a soft-spoken man with strong arms, and he loved his daughter more than anything. "Zuba," he would often say, lifting her high into the air. "One day you will be more than this village. You will be a teacher, a helper, a light to many." Zubaida believed him. Her dream was to wear fine dresses like her teacher, Madame Kemi, and write beautiful words on the blackboard. She loved school, books, and learning new things. But above all, she loved her family. Then, one rainy afternoon, everything changed. Her father never returned from the river. Villagers searched for him for days, but all they found was his broken paddle floating by the shore. The river, which once gave them life, had taken her father away. Zubaida cried until her eyes were sore. Her mother, Adesua, cried too. But something inside her seemed to break. She stopped smiling. She stopped caring. Over time, Adesua grew bitter. She blamed the world, the river, and sometimes even Zubaida. "If your father didn't have to buy you that school uniform, he wouldn't have gone fishing in the storm," she whispered one day, not meeting her daughter's eyes. Zubaida didn't understand why her mother was changing. The woman who once sang while cooking and braided her hair with love had now turned cold. Adesua barely spoke, except to complain. She no longer went to the market. She spent her days lying on a mat, staring at the thatched roof as if waiting for something better to fall from the sky. Zubaida tried to help. She swept the compound, fetched water, and cooked simple meals using the little food they had. She even stopped asking for school books. But it was never enough for her mother. "Go outside. Go beg if you must," Adesua snapped one morning when there was no breakfast. Zubaida lowered her head and walked quietly out the door. What hurt her most was not the hunger, but the silence that had grown between them. One day, Adesua overheard women at the market talking about work opportunities in the city. "The Adewale family needs a cook," one woman said. "They pay well. Real city money." That night, Adesua told Zubaida, "I'm going to the city. There's a rich family there. I'll send money. You stay here." Zubaida blinked. "Will I still go to school?" "We'll see," her mother said, already folding her one good dress. And just like that, she was gone. For weeks, Zubaida stayed with a neighbor. She waited for letters, for money, for anything. But the city swallowed her mother whole. When Adesua finally returned, her hands carried bags of fancy perfume and shoes. Her lips were painted red, and she smelled of wealth. But the warmth in her eyes, that was gone, and Zubaida didn't know that the worst was yet to come. When Adesua returned from the city, she wasn't the same woman the village had once known. Her head was held higher, her steps sharper. She no longer spoke with the humility of a widow. She spoke with pride, no hunger, in her voice. Zubaida stood silently at the door as her mother unpacked the city bags. There were bottles of perfume, with golden caps, silky scarves, and shiny slippers. Zubaida's heart fluttered with hope. Maybe things were going to be better. Maybe her mother had found peace. But Adesua didn't smile at her daughter. She didn't ask how Zubaida had been, or whether she had eaten. She just muttered, "Don't touch anything. These are not for children." Zubaida's face fell. That evening, by the fire, Adesua finally spoke. "I work in the mansion of the Adewale family. she said. They are billionaires, real billionaires. Their kitchen is bigger than this entire house. Their son, Uchenna, wears clothes imported from France. Their toilet. Even their toilet is white like clouds. Zubaida listened quietly, stirring the pot of watery soup. She wanted to be happy for her mother, but something about the way she spoke made her uneasy. Over the next few weeks, Adesua returned to the city again and again. Each time she came back, she brought more gifts, lipsticks, fancy soaps, tins of sardines. But her heart seemed to grow colder. She stopped asking Zubaida about school. When the girl spoke of her dreams to teach one day, Adesua only scoffed. "Dreams won't feed you," she snapped. "Better learn to survive." Then, one morning, everything changed. Adesua stood by the doorway, dressed in a crisp wrapper and polished sandals. "You're coming with me," she told Zubaida. "To the city?" Zubaida asked, eyes wide. "Yes, there's work to do. Madame Ifeoma needs an extra hand." Zubaida hesitated. "What about school?" Her mother's eyes narrowed. "Do you think books will save you from hunger?" Zubaida lowered her head. The journey to the city was long. Zubaida stared out the bus window, clutching a bag with her only good dress. The city was loud and fast, full of honking cars and tall buildings. The Adewale mansion was unlike anything she'd ever seen. It had a giant gate guarded by men in uniform and glass doors that opened without being touched. Inside, everything sparkled, floors like mirrors, walls with glowing lights, and a smell of lemon and luxury. Zubaida was awestruck. "Mama, this place is like a palace." Adesua smirked. "And one day, I'll own one just like it." They were shown into the servants' quarters. It was still nicer than their whole house back in Itoro. Zubaida helped her mother with chores, sweeping, peeling yams, folding laundry. She noticed a boy around her age walking through the hallway with headphones in his ears. Uchenna. He didn't even glance at her. Later that night, as they sat on a bench outside, Adesua leaned close to Zubaida. Her voice was low, almost whispering. "Do you see how rich these people are? If we are smart, we can have a piece of it too." Zubaida blinked. "How?" But her mother didn't answer. Instead, she smiled, a smile that made Zubaida's heart grow cold. Something had changed in her mother, and it wasn't just the perfume or the shoes, it was something deeper, something dangerous. The next morning, Zubaida awoke early and began sweeping the front steps of the servants' quarters. Birds chirped from the trees that lined the Adewale. Estate and the cool city breeze brushed her cheeks. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Inside the mansion, Adesua was watching from the kitchen window, her arms folded and her eyes narrow. She wasn't thinking about cleaning or cooking. She was thinking about the conversation she had overheard between Madame Ifeoma and her friend. They'd pay anything to protect their name, the friend had said, sipping imported tea. Anything. That word stayed in Adesua's mind like a song she couldn't forget. Anything. She looked at her daughter, obedient, quiet, and beautiful. Then she thought of Uchenna, the shy boy, heir to the Adewale fortune. A plan formed in her mind. It started as a whisper of an idea, but it grew, louder each day. If she could create a scandal, something so terrible it threatened the Adewale name, the family would do anything to bury it. They'd pay millions, and with that money, Adesua could escape poverty forever. All she needed was Zubaida. That evening, Adesua called her daughter into the room. "Tomorrow, you'll wear your finest dress," she said, smoothing the sleeves of her blouse. "But Mama," Zubaida said softly, "I don't understand. I thought I was just helping with chores." "You'll still help," her mother replied. "But Madam wants the house to feel lively. You're just going to keep her son company, nothing more." Zubaida was confused. I've never spoken to him before. He's quiet, like you, Adesua said quickly. Just smile, be kind, play, that's all. Zubaida didn't argue. She trusted her mother, even if something in her voice felt strange. The next day, Zubaida wore a neat pink dress with white flowers. It was old, but it was clean. Her mother fixed her braids and dusted her shoes. She looked lovely, like a village princess. Perfect, Adesua whispered. When Madame Ifeoma left for the salon, Adesua gently nudged Zubaida toward Uchena's room. Go play with him. I'll be in the kitchen, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Zubaida hesitated outside the boy's door, then knocked softly. Come in, came a voice from inside. She opened the door slowly. Uchena was sitting on the floor, building a car model. He looked up, surprised. I'm Zubaida, she said shyly. Your mother said I could play here. Uchena blinked, then shrugged. Okay. They didn't talk much at first, but soon Zubaida picked up some toy blocks and helped him build a small tower. Uchena smiled for the first time. Down the hallway, Adesua crept close and peeked through a small crack in the door. Her eyes lit up as she saw the two sitting close together, playing and laughing. She took out a small phone and snapped a picture. Later, that evening, Adesua uploaded the photo to her cloud storage and smiled. Stage 1, she whispered. Done. But Zubaida knew nothing of this. To her, it was just a new friendship. She thought her mother was finally proud of her. That night, as they lay on their shared mat in the servants' room, Zubaida whispered, Mama, today was fun. Adesua turned away, hiding the greed burning in her eyes. Good, she said coldly, because for her, fun wasn't the goal. Money was. Days passed, and Adesua's plan deepened like a hole she was digging with no intention of stopping. She became more secretive, watching Zubaida's every move with sharp eyes. But Zubaida, young and innocent, thought her mother was simply proud of her for behaving well in a big city mansion. Uchena, too, began to look forward to Zubaida's visits. He was a boy who had grown up with guards, tutors, and technology, but never friendship. Zubaida was gentle, calm, and didn't care about his money or name. She listened to his stories. She didn't laugh when he stuttered. For the first time, he felt seen. But to Adesua, this was all just a setup. Late one evening, when the mansion was quiet and Madame Ifeoma had left for a business meeting, Adesua knocked on Uchena's door and stepped inside without waiting for an answer. He looked up from his books. Yes? Tomorrow you should spend time alone with Zubaida, she said, smiling a little too wide. Uchena frowned. Why? She enjoys your company. You enjoy hers. Why not? She paused, watching him carefully. I'll make sure Madam and Sir aren't around. You'll have the house to yourselves. He shifted uncomfortably. I guess. She nodded. Good boy. The next morning, Adesua made Zubaida wear her brightest dress and sprayed some of Madame Ifeoma's perfume on her neck. You must look like a queen, she said. Zubaida blinked. Why? We're just going to play. Adesua crouched in front of her. Zubaida, she said, her tone soft but firm. This is our chance. You don't understand yet, but you will. Just do as I say. Zubaida nodded slowly, but her stomach felt uneasy. Once Madame Ifeoma and her husband left, Adesua sent Zubaida to Uchena's room and then stayed in the hallway, phone in hand, waiting. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. Finally, she crept toward the door. Peeking inside, she saw Zubaida and Uchena sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing animals with colored pencils. They were laughing. Uchena had drawn a crocodile that looked like a chicken. Zubaida had tears in her eyes from laughing so hard. Adesua's eyes darkened. This wasn't working. Nothing scandalous was happening. Frustrated, she stepped into the room. Both children looked up. Mama? Zubaida asked, surprised. Adesua ignored her and turned to Uchenna. You're a boy, she said flatly. She's a girl, don't you know what that means? Uchenna looked confused. I don't understand. Don't act innocent, she snapped. You know what I'm talking about. Uchenna stood up quickly. Ma, please leave. Adesua took a step forward, her voice, now a hiss. Do you think I brought her here to play games? Zubaida stood too, confused and scared. Mama, what are you doing? Adesua turned to her daughter. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. Uchenna backed toward the wall, panic rising in his chest. Then he remembered something, his father's warning. If anything ever feels wrong, hit the red button under your desk. His fingers reached for it. Click! A loud alarm blared through the mansion. Adesua froze. Security guards rushed in within seconds. Zubaida screamed as they burst into the room. Adesua tried to run, but a guard tackled her to the ground. Let me go, she shrieked. I didn't do anything. But no one listened. Cameras had captured everything. Zubaida stood in the corner, shaking, tears falling down her cheeks. And just like that, the world she knew crumbled around her. The alarms. Echoes still rang in Zubaida's ears as she sat trembling in a chair in the security room. Her small hands gripped the hem of her dress, and her eyes, wide with shock, refused to blink. Outside the room, the guards dragged Adesua toward the waiting police van. She kicked and screamed, yelling at everyone, even cursing Zubaida under her breath. She's lying, this is all a mistake. But no one believed her. The Adawales were furious, especially Madame Ifeoma. She had treated Adesua like family, fed her, paid her well, trusted her in their home. Now she stood pale and speechless, holding her son Uchenna close. Uchenna, who had given a full statement already, sat quietly beside his mother. He kept glancing toward the room where Zubaida sat alone, unsure if she was okay. He had seen fear in her eyes when her mother lost control. That fear haunted him. At the police station, Zubaida sat across from a kind female officer. Sweetheart, the officer said gently, can you tell us what happened? Zubaida looked down at her hands. Take your time, the officer added. Zubaida stayed silent. Her mother's last words echoed in her mind like thunder. If you tell anyone, something terrible will happen to you. The officer sighed and stepped out. She won't speak. She's too scared. We need her father, another officer said. Back in Itoro, Kalechi the farmer ran through the village calling out, Zubaida's father, the city police want you. When Kazim, Zubaida's uncle, finally reached Kofi, the man dropped his fishing net and ran barefoot to the roadside, catching the next bus to the city. Hours later, Kofi arrived at the station, sweat-soaked and confused. When he saw his daughter sitting quietly, her small body curled into the corner of a bench, he rushed forward. Zubaida, he gasped, kneeling before her. Her head lifted slowly, and the moment their eyes met, the dam inside her broke. She threw her arms around him and began to cry. I'm here, Kofi whispered, tears forming in his own eyes. I'm here now. The officer nodded and stepped back. She might talk now. Kofi gently cupped her face. Zubaida, you're safe. I'm here. No one will hurt you. Just tell me. What happened? Zubaida opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. She looked around the room. I don't want to die, she whispered. Kofi's heart clenched. Why would you say that? Mama said. If I told anyone I would die, Zubaida replied, her voice barely audible. Kofi's lips parted, in shock. He pulled her close again, pressing her head against his chest. Zubaida, listen to me. You are my daughter. I will protect you with everything I have. No one will ever harm you again. It took a few moments, but Zubaida finally began to speak. She told them everything, from the day she stopped going to school, to being dragged to the city, to the way her mother had changed, and finally, the terrifying moment in Uchena's room. Every word pierced Kofi's soul like a blade. When she finished, the officer quietly stepped forward. "That's all we need. Thank you, Zubaida. You were very brave." Adesua was charged with child endangerment, attempted exploitation, and criminal intent to defraud. The evidence, photos, Uchena's testimony, and now Zubaida's words, was undeniable. The court moved swiftly. As she was taken away, Adesua didn't cry. She didn't even look back. But Zubaida watched her mother go, heartbroken not for herself, but for the woman who had once held her hand under the mango tree in Itoro. Zubaida returned to the village of Itoro not as the same bright-eyed girl, who once played in the dust with dreams in her heart, but as a quiet shadow of herself. The journey home was silent. Her hand stayed tucked in her father's calloused palm the entire way, as if letting go would bring back the fear. When they arrived, the entire village gathered. People had heard the story, how a mother betrayed her own child for wealth, how a girl stood quietly in the face of terror, and how justice at last was served. Elder Mama Binta, the chief's wife, stepped forward and took Zubaida into her arms. "You are our child," she whispered, "and you are safe now." The village women took turns cooking for Kofi and Zubaida. The men helped repair the cracks in their small home. For the first time in months, Zubaida slept without hearing shouting voices or city alarms. But the scars were still there. She would often wake up in the middle of the night, clutching her bedsheet, her body shivering with memories of her mother's rage, her threats. Kofi would rush to her side, holding her close. "I'm here," he would whisper. "You're not alone." But even a father's love can't always chase away every fear. One afternoon, Madame Ifeoma arrived in the village with her son Uchenna and 2 guards. They brought boxes, books, clothes, and school supplies. More importantly, she brought an invitation. "I want Zubaida to come live in the city," she told Kofi. "Not as a servant, as a student. My husband and I have arranged for her to attend one of the best schools." Kofi's eyes welled with tears. "You would do that? After everything?" Madame Ifeoma nodded. "Your daughter saved mine. Saved my family's name. It is the least we can do." Zubaida, standing by the doorway, didn't say a word. Her eyes searched her father's face. Kofi knelt beside her. "It's your choice, Zuba. But know this, wherever you go, I'll be proud of you." Zubaida thought of all the girls in her village who never got a chance. She thought of the classroom she once sat in, dreaming of being a teacher. She nodded slowly. "I want to go." Her journey in the city began again, but this time with light instead of fear. She stayed with the Adewal family in a small but comfortable room with her own bed and shelves of books. Madame Ifeoma hired a gentlewoman to look after her, and Uchenna often walked her to school. Zubaida studied hard. She learned quickly, always at the top of her class. Her teachers loved her discipline, her kindness, and the strength in her quiet nature. Back in Itoro, Kofi hung a picture of Zubaida in her new school uniform beside the doorway. Visitors often stopped and smiled. "She's going to change the world," he would say proudly. But healing isn't always fast. Zubaida still had bad days, moments when a loud voice or a slamming door made her flinch. But slowly, through journaling, reading, and counseling sessions, arranged by Madame Ifeoma, she began to speak more. She laughed again, sometimes even louder than Uchenna. One evening, while watching the stars on the Adewale's balcony, she said something that surprised even herself. "I don't hate her anymore," she whispered. Madame Ifeoma turned to her. "Your mother?" Zubaida nodded. "I just hope one day she remembers who she used to be." Years passed like the gentle winds of Harmattan, soft but steady. The little girl from Itaro, who once feared her own shadow, had now grown into a graceful, confident young woman. Zubaida stood tall at 17, her hair neatly braided, her school uniform always pressed. She walked with quiet strength, and her eyes carried stories most people would never guess. She had finished secondary school with top honors. Her dream of becoming a teacher had not only returned, it had become her purpose. The Adawales, true to their word, supported her through every step. Madame Ifeoma treated her like family, and Uchenna, now more like a brother than a friend, never missed a chance to brag about her to his classmates. But Itaro was never far from Zubaida's heart. After completing her final exams, she made a decision that surprised everyone. She wanted to go back to the village. To visit? Madame Ifeoma asked gently. No, Zubaida replied with a smile. To stay. To give back. They respected her wish. With the support of the Adewale Foundation, she returned home, not as a child, but as a leader. The entire village gathered to welcome her. Drums echoed through the hills, women danced with calabashes on their heads, and children chased each other around the compound. Kofi stood proudly at the center, wiping away tears he didn't try to hide. Zubaida didn't waste time. With funds and supplies from her sponsors, she built a small school at the edge of the village. A clean, simple structure with 3 classrooms, benches made by local carpenters, and a chalkboard in each room. The name was painted across the front wall in bold white letters, The Light of Itoro School, founded by Zubaida. On the first day, 30 little girls and boys showed up with bare feet and wide eyes, excited to learn. Zubaida stood at the front of the class, wearing a long green dress and holding a piece of chalk. Her voice was calm and warm as she welcomed her students. You are the future, she said, and the world needs your light. Meanwhile, in the city prison, Adesua sat alone on a wooden bench, staring at a wrinkled paper in her hands. It was a letter from Zubaida. It had no anger, no bitterness, just 4 simple lines. Mama, I still remember the good in you. I forgive you. I pray you find peace. Adesua read the note again and again. For the first time in years, she wept, not for her lost wealth, but for the daughter she had nearly destroyed. Back in Itoro, Zubaida walked through the market with books in her arms. People greeted her with respect. Teacher Zubaida, Light. Of Itoro! She smiled shyly each time, never letting it get to her head. At night, she sat with her father under the mango tree, the same one she used to cry beneath as a little girl. Now she laughed freely, and Kofi often watched her with silent joy. One evening, a girl from her class stayed behind. Teacher, the girl asked, how did you become so strong? Zubaida looked up at the sky, the stars blinking gently. I went through something dark, she said, but I found people who believed in me, and I chose to believe in myself too. The girl nodded, inspired. Zubaida smiled. She had lost so much, but she had found her purpose, and in that purpose, she had become more than a survivor. She had become a light.